Chapter 1. A Tiger in the House. Do you have a pet? Can you name any 5 animals that can be kept as pets? Would you like to have a cub as your pet? This story is about a man who tamed a tiger. Let's read and enjoy. Timothy, the tiger cub, was discovered by grandfather on a hunting expedition in the Tarai jungle near Dehra. Grandfather was no shikari, but as he knew the forests of the Shivalik hills better than most people did, he was persuaded to accompany the party. It consisted of several very important persons from Delhi to advise on the terrain and the direction the beaters should take once a tiger had been spotted. The camp itself was sumptuous. 7 large tents, one for each shikari, a dining tent, and a number of servants' tents. The dinner was very good, as grandfather admitted afterwards. It was not often that one saw hot water plates, finger glasses, and 7 or 8 courses in a tent in the jungle.
But that was how things were done in the days of the viceroys.
There were also some 15 elephants, 4 of them with horas for the shikaris, and the others specially trained for taking part in the beat. The sportsmen never saw a tiger, nor did they shoot anything else, though they saw a number of deer, peacocks, and wild boar. They were giving up all hope of finding a tiger, and were beginning to shoot at jackals, when grandfather, strolling down the forest path at some distance from the rest of the party, discovered a little tiger about 18 inches long, hiding among the intricate roots of banyan tree. Grandfather picked him up and brought him home after the camp had broken up. He had the distinction of being the only member of the party to have bagged any game, dead or live. At first, the tiger cub, who was named Timothy by grandmother, was brought up entirely on milk given to him in a feeding bottle by our cook, Mahmood. But the milk proved too rich for him, and he was put on a diet of raw mutton and cod liver oil, to be followed later by a more tempting diet of pigeons and rabbits. Timothy was provided with 2 companions, Toto the monkey, who was bold enough to pull the young tiger by the tail, and then climb up the curtains if Timothy lost his temper, and a small mongrel puppy, found on the road by grandfather. At first, Timothy appeared to be quite afraid of the puppy, and darted back with a spring if it came too near. He would make absurd dashes at it with his large forepaws, and then retreat to a ridiculous safe distance. Finally, he allowed the puppy to crawl on his back and rest there.
One of Timothy's favorite amusements was to stalk anyone who would play with him, and so,
when I came to live with grandfather, I became one of the tiger's favorites. With a crafty look in his glittering eyes and his body crouching, he would creep closer and closer to me, suddenly making a dash for my feet, rolling over on his back and kicking with delight, and pretending to bite my ankles. He was by this time the size of a full-grown retriever, and when I took him out for walks, people on the road would give us a wide berth. When he pulled hard on his chain, I had difficulty in keeping up with him. His favorite place in the house was the drawing room, and he would make himself comfortable on the long sofa. Reclining there with great dignity and snarling at anybody who tried to get him off. Timothy had clean habits and would scrub his face with his paws exactly like a cat. He slept at night in the cook's quarters and was always delighted at being let out by him in the morning.
"One of these days,"
declared grandmother in her prophetic manner,
"we are going to find Timothy sitting on Mahmud's bed, and no sign of the cook except his clothes and shoes."
Of course, it never came to that. But when Timothy was about 6 months old, a change came over him. He grew steadily less friendly.
When out for a walk with me, he would try to steal away to stalk a cat or someone's pet
Pekingese. Sometimes, at night, we would hear frenzied crackling from the poultry house, and in the morning there would be feathers lying all over the veranda. Timothy had to be chained up more often. And finally,
when he began to stalk Mahmud about the house with what looked like villainous intent,
grandfather decided it was time to transfer him to a zoo. The nearest zoo was at Lucknow, 200 miles away, reserving a first-class compartment for himself and Timothy. No one would share a compartment with them. Grandfather took him to Lucknow, where the zoo authorities were only too glad to receive as a gift a well-fed and fairly civilized tiger. About 6 months later, when my grandparents were visiting some relatives in Lucknow,
grandfather took the opportunity of calling at the zoo to see how Timothy was getting on.
I was not there to accompany him, but I heard all about it when he returned to Dehra. Arriving at the zoo,
grandfather made straight for the particular cage in which Timothy had been interned.
The tiger was there, crouching in a corner, full-grown and with a magnificent striped coat.
"Hello, Timothy,"
said grandfather, and climbing the railing with ease, he put his arm through the bars of the cage. The tiger approached the bars and allowed grandfather to put both hands around his head. Grandfather stroked the tiger's forehead and tickled his ear, and, when he growled, smacked him across the mouth, which was his old way of keeping him quiet. He licked grandfather's hand and only sprang away when a leopard in the next cage snarled at him. Grandfather shooed the leopard away, and the tiger returned to lick his hands. But every now and then, the leopard would rush at the bars, and the tiger would slink back to his corner. A number of people had gathered to watch the reunion when a keeper pushed his way through the crowd and asked grandfather what he was doing.
"I am talking to Timothy,"
said grandfather.
"Weren't you here when I gave him to the zoo 6 months ago?" "I haven't been here very long,"
said the surprised keeper.
"Please continue your conversation, but I have never been able to touch him myself. He is always very bad-tempered. Why don't you put him somewhere else?"
suggested grandfather.
"That leopard keeps frightening him. I'll go and see the superintendent about it."
Grandfather went in search of the superintendent of the zoo, but found that he had gone home early, and so, after wandering about the zoo for a little while, he returned to Timothy's cage to say goodbye. It was beginning to get dark. He had been stroking and slapping Timothy for about 5 minutes when he found another keeper observing him with some alarm.
Grandfather recognized him as the keeper who had been there when
Timothy had
first come to the zoo.
"You remember me,"
said grandfather.
"Now why don't you transfer Timothy to another cage, away from this stupid leopard?" "But sir,"
stammered the keeper.
"it is not your tiger." I know,
said grandfather testily.
"I realize he is no longer mine, but you might at least take a suggestion or two from me." "I remember your tiger very well,"
said the keeper.
"He died 2 months ago." "Died?"
exclaimed grandfather.
"Yes, sir. of pneumonia. This tiger was trapped in the hills only last month, and he is very dangerous."
Grandfather could think of nothing to say. The tiger was still licking his arm. With increasing relish, Grandfather took what seemed to him an age to withdraw his hand from the cage. With his face near the tiger's, he mumbled, "Good night, Timothy," and giving the keeper a scornful look, walked briskly out of the zoo.
Chapter 2. Uncle Pajar hangs a picture. Have you ever tried putting up a picture on a wall? What are the things you will need if you are asked to do so? Is it an easy or a difficult task? This is a hilarious extract from 3 Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome. Nothing seems to go right when Uncle Pajar decides to hang a picture. You never saw such a commotion up and down a house in all your life as when my Uncle Pajar undertook to do a job. A picture had come from the frame makers, and Aunt Maria asked what was to be done with it. Uncle Pajar replied,
"Oh, you leave that to me. Don't you, any of you, worry yourselves about that. I'll do all that."
He took off his coat and began. He sent the girl out for 6 pennyworth of nails, and then one of the boys after her to tell her what size to get. And from that, he gradually worked down and started the whole house.
"Now, you go and get me my hammer. Will!"
he shouted.
"And bring me the rule, Tom. And I shall want the ladder. And I had better have a kitchen chair too. And Jim, you run round to Mr. Google's and tell him pa's kind regards and hopes his leg's better. And will he lend his spirit level?"
And then he lifted the picture and dropped it. It came out of the frame, and he tried to save the glass and cut himself. And then he sprang around the room, looking for his handkerchief. He could not find it because it was in the pocket of the coat he had taken off, and he did not know where he had put the coat.
"Doesn't anybody in the whole house know where my coat is? I never came across such a set in all my life. Upon my word, I didn't. 6 of you, and you can't find a coat that I put down not 5 minutes ago."
Then he got up and found he had been sitting on it and called out,
"Oh, you can give it up. I've found it myself now. Might just as well ask the cat to find anything as expect you people to find it."
And then he had another go, the whole family, including the girl and the charwoman, standing round in a semicircle, ready to help. 2 people held the chair, a third helped him up on it, a fourth handed him a nail, and a fifth passed him the hammer, and he took hold of it and dropped the nail.
"There,"
he said in an injured tone.
"Now the nail's gone."
We all went down on our knees to look for it. The nail was found at last, but by that time he had lost the hammer.
"Where's the hammer? What did I do with the hammer? Great heavens, 7 of you gaping round there, and you don't know what I did with the hammer."
We found the hammer, and then he lost sight of the mark he had made on the wall where the nail was to go in. He had to measure again, and this time he used a bit of string, and at the critical moment, when he was leaning over the chair at an angle of 45, the string slipped, and down the piano he slid, a really fine musical effect being produced by the suddenness with which his head and body struck all the notes at the same time. At last, Uncle Pajar got the spot fixed again and put the point of the nail on it with his left hand and took the hammer in his right hand. And with the first blow, he smashed his thumb and dropped the hammer with a yell on somebody's toes. Aunt Maria mildly observed that Next time, Uncle Podger was going to hammer a nail into the wall. She hoped he'd let her know in time, so that she could make arrangements to go and spend a week with her mother while it was being done. And then he had another go, and at the second blow, the nail went clean through the plaster and half the hammer after it. After midnight, the picture was put up, very crooked and insecure, the wall for yards round, looking as if it had been smoothed down with a rake, and everybody dead beat and wretched, except Uncle Podger. Chapter 3. I Want to Be. Which is your favorite season? What do you like about winters? How would you feel if someone gave you a blanket on seeing you shivering with cold? Let's read this poem to know what a blanket wants. I want to be a blanket, safe and warm, covering a soul in need of warmth. I want to be woven by a lady who works long and hard for the warmth of people all over the world. I want to be laid on the bed of a child who is responsible for making his bed every day. I want to go on long trips, camping trips, maybe even to be laid on a beach to let the little boy's parents get a little tan. I want to be a blanket. I want to keep the little boy safe and warm while there are loud noises outside. I want to be a shelter while the little boy is having a sleepover and reading a book with a flashlight. I want to have a warm bed to be on while nobody is sleeping on it. I want to be a blanket. Chapter 4. How the Stars Were Born. Have you ever noticed the night sky and seen the twinkling stars? Have you ever wondered how the stars came into being? What else do you notice in the night sky? Let's read this mythological story that speaks how the moon and the stars were born. Long ago there lived a princess. Her name was Layla, and the entire court loved her. She always helped those in need and had a smile for everyone. Layla wasn't vain, although she had every reason to be. She had wavy black hair, clear skin and a face that was perfectly oval. Her real beauty, however, lay in her eyes. Whenever Layla felt a strong emotion, they changed from their usual black to true gold. It seemed that nothing could make her angry, but alas, it was not so. Her aunt ruled the kingdom, while her father was away, tending to his people's needs. Her aunt was selfish, petty and cruel. She was proud of her beauty and didn't hesitate to show it. The people hated and feared her, jealous of the way the court adored her niece, but detested her. Layla's aunt, Desdemona, devised a plan. If she were to send Layla on a quest to find the lost crown, yes, that would work. The crown was the key to the realm's power. It had been taken away by an immortal centuries ago, and the kingdom had been having difficulties ever since. Only someone of royal blood could touch the crown, so that fact gave Desdemona a legitimate reason for sending Layla. Layla's father would not be able to argue against such a decision. Smiling a smile that didn't reach her ice-blue eyes, Desdemona called her niece to her chambers. She proceeded to explain that the king needed the crown if they were to save the kingdom from ruin. "And don't come back until you've got the crown." Layla knew that her aunt just wanted to get rid of her. Where on earth was she supposed to find the crown? They had been looking for centuries, and no one had ever found it. And at night, there was nothing in the sky to light her way. "The sky is so frightful at night." Lost in her thoughts, Layla didn't realize that she had already exited the castle grounds. Then a thought popped into her mind so suddenly that she gasped. "Maybe no one has found the crown on earth because it isn't on earth anymore. But where could it be? Then her mind snapped everything into place, like pieces of a puzzle. If the immortal that stole the crown had wings, maybe it had hidden the crown in the sky. Abruptly, an immortal's voice echoed in her head.
Well done, mortal. You are the first of your kind to get this far. The rest will not be dark. I will place you in the sky. You have tonight, and tonight only, to solve my riddle and locate the crown. If you lose, you must stay in the sky forever.
The immortal spoke again.
Here is my riddle. Near yet far. Conquer the dark. Is it needed by the Tsar? Make your mark. End of the day. As the light fades away. Remember this. Nothing gold can forever stay.
Layla almost started to walk before she realized that she would be lost in pitch darkness, thinking desperately of how to light her path. She looked down. Her necklace, made of shiny beads, was glowing brightly. Breaking the clasp, she started to move. Every few seconds, she dropped a bead. She wandered all over the sky trying to solve the riddle. It didn't make any sense. Layla went left, right, east, west, diagonally in all directions, everywhere. Occasionally she dropped one of the sapphires or rubies from her necklace as well. Finally, Layla reached the round silver stone in the middle of her necklace. She had only half of her light source left and wasn't any closer to finding the crown. Tossing the silver ball into the inky darkness, she continued. Just as dawn was about to grace the sky, Layla realized two things. The beads crisscrossed in every direction. Some had been kicked into funny-looking clusters, and the crown, it was lost. She remembered the last line of the riddle. Nothing gold can forever stay. The crown was made of gold. Did it mean that they didn't need the crown?
Well, have you found the crown, mortal?
The immortal's voice slammed through her head. Taking a deep breath, Layla silently explained her theory about the riddle's last line. The immortal sighed.
You are correct. The crown is only a symbol of power and of greed. It was destroyed long ago. I cannot give you the crown, but I can give you this.
He handed her a golden flame, which didn't burn or radiate heat. It just glowed.
It is the flame of guilt. Give it to someone who has unjustly wronged you, and watch the flame. Use it quickly, for like everything else gold, it will not last long.
The voice had been getting softer and softer. Layla's last conscious thought before falling asleep was, I'm home in my bed. Desdemona was furious when a maid came running to the court to tell her that the princess was at home, stalking angrily to her throne. She waited for her niece to bring her the crown. At least with the crown she would be extremely powerful and could, perhaps, get rid of the little brat once and for all. She continued to think in this vein for some time, and didn't realize that Layla was in the court. Layla stood quietly for a moment, studying her aunt. Then she opened her left hand. The golden flame twined round her fingers and blazed in her palm. The court watched breathlessly as she began to speak. I did not find the crown. It was destroyed long ago. The immortal who stole it, however, gave me this as a reward. I would like to give it to my aunt as a gift for being so kind as to trust me with this quest. The greedy aunt said, Yes, my dear niece, I accept your flame. Layla said, There is a condition. If someone unworthy touches the flame, he or she will spend the rest of his or her life as a servant in the fairy court. Desdemona was horrified. She knew she could not now refuse to take the flame. As soon as she took the flame, she began to fade and finally disappeared, never to be seen again. That night, as Layla looked out of the window, she saw that the silver stone which was once at the center of her necklace and all the other beads and gems were gleaming in the sky. It was beautiful. This is how the moon and the stars came to the sky. Chapter 5. Androcallis and the Lion. Have you ever been to a forest? Can you name 10 wild animals you may find in a forest? Do you think animals also show gratitude when we help them? The tale of Androcallis and the lion is said to have been written by Aesop, the great Greek storyteller, who always summed up his stories from the animal kingdom with a moral. In the case of Androcallis, the lesson is that gratitude is the sign of a noble soul. It happened in the old days at Rome that a slave named Androcallis escaped from his master and fled into the forest. He wandered there for many days until he was weary and well-nigh spent with hunger and despair. Just then he heard a lion near him, mourning and groaning, and at times roaring terribly. Tired as he was, Androcallis rose up and rushed away from the lion. As he made his way through the bushes, he stumbled over the root of a tree and fell down, lame and injured. When he tried to get up, he saw the lion coming towards him, limping on 3 feet and holding his forepaw in front of him. Poor Androcallis was in despair. He had no strength to rise and run away, and there was the lion coming upon him. But when the great beast came up to him, instead of attacking him, it kept on moaning and groaning and looking at Androcallis, who saw that the lion was holding his right paw, which was covered with blood and much swollen. Looking more closely at it, Androcallis saw a great big thorn pressed into the paw, which was the cause of all the lion's trouble. Picking up courage, he seized the thorn and threw it out of the lion's paw, who roared with pain when the thorn came out. Soon afterwards, however, the lion found such relief from it that he fawned upon Androcallis and showed in every way he knew to whom he owed the relief. Instead of eating him up, he brought him a young deer that he had slain, and Androcallis managed to make a meal from it. The lion brought something to eat for Androcallis daily. A friendship sprang up between the man and the beast. But one day a number of soldiers came marching through the forest and found Androcallis. He could not explain what he was doing, and so they took him a prisoner and brought him back to the town from where he had fled. There his master soon found him and brought him before the authorities. He was condemned to death because he had fled from his master. In those times, the custom was to throw murderers and other criminals to lions in a huge circus, so that while the criminals were punished, the public could enjoy the spectacle of a combat between them and the wild beasts. Androcallis was condemned to be thrown to the lions, and on the appointed day, he was led forth into the arena and left there alone with only a spear to protect him from the lion. The emperor was in the royal box that day. A hungry lion was soon brought into the arena. The emperor and all his ministers came to witness the spectacle. The lion was let loose from his cage, and he rushed, leaping and roaring towards his victim. But as soon as he came close to Androcallis, he recognized his friend and fawned upon him and licked his hand. Like a friendly dog, the lion stroked Androcallis with his paw and made no attempt to do him harm. It was, of course, the lion Androcallis had met in the forest. The emperor was very surprised that the hungry lion did not attack Androcallis. He summoned Androcallis to ask him how it so happened that a cruel lion had lost all its disposition of cruelty. Androcallis told him the whole story. The emperor pardoned the slave, Androcallis, and ordered his master to set him free. The lion was let loose in his native forest, free to enjoy liberty once more. Chapter 6. The Arrow and the Song. Do you know how to use a bow and arrow? Have you ever seen an archery contest? The poet shoots an arrow into the sky. Let's read this poem and know where he finds it.
I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to earth. I knew not where, for so swiftly it flew, the sight could not follow it in its flight. I breathed a song into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For who has sight so keen and strong, that it can follow the flight of song? Long, long afterwards, in an oak, I found the arrow still unbroke, and the song from beginning to end I found again in the heart of a friend.
Chapter 7. The Gold Moher. Have you ever heard the story of Akbar and Birbal? Do you know who Birbal was? Do you wish to be a witty person like Birbal? Let's read this story to find out how Birbal solved a case with his intelligence. Birbal was known for his intelligence, his fair-mindedness, and his proximity to Emperor Akbar. Citizens seeking justice often came to Birbal, particularly when Akbar was away from the city. In one particular instance, Birbal was trying to resolve a dispute between two merchants.
So you have no proof of what you are saying?
Birbal asked the merchant.
No, Huzur,
said the merchant. His name was Ramchand.
No, written receipt for the 1,500 rupees that you say you lent your friend Jwala Prasad, and no witness to the transaction. No, Huzur,
said Ramchand again.
Jwala Prasad is a fellow merchant as well as my friend. He needed the money and promised to return it within 6 months. So I lent it to him. I thought he would honor his word. But he refuses even to remember what happened. Write down all that you have told me and sign it,
said Birbal.
I will see what I can do.
Birbal then sent for Jwala Prasad, the other merchant. Jwala Prasad bustled into Birbal's presence, looking very pleased, bowed low, and said,
Raja Sahib, I am deeply honored and grateful for this summons. How may I be of service to your lordship?
Read this,
said Birbal, and handed him Ramchand's written statement. The merchant paled a little as he read it, but he said with great assurance,
All lies, your lordship, all lies. I thought Ramchand was my friend. I have helped him so many times, and this is how he repays me.
He shook his head sadly.
I know his shop is not doing well, but this is not the way. So you deny that Ramchand lent you 1,500 rupees, which you promised to return within 6 months,
said Birbal.
I absolutely deny it, your honor,
said Jwala Prasad solemnly.
And surely he would have taken a receipt from me if he had lent me such a large sum. Why does he not produce that receipt? He says that he did not take a receipt,
said Birbal.
This is the problem. Thank you for coming. I am sorry for wasting your time. Raja Sahib, I am your humble servant.
Jwala Prasad folded his hands, bowed, and took his leave. A few days later, Birbal sent each of the merchants a large tin of ghee with a request that they sell the ghee for him after checking its purity. On heating the ghee, both Ramchand and Jwala Prasad discovered a gold moher at the bottom of the tin. Ramchand promptly returned the moher to Birbal, saying it must have fallen into the ghee by mistake. Jwala Prasad handed the moher that he had found to his son, who helped him in his shop.
"Keep this safely,"
he said,
"till I ask for it."
When the two merchants had sold the ghee that Birbal had sent them, they went to give him the money from the sale. Birbal took the money from Ramchand, thanked him and sent him away. Jwala Prasad appeared later with a smaller amount of money.
"Your lordship, the tin only contain 1 mound.
Protested Jwala Prasad.
I weighed it before I heated the ghee. My son was with me." "Then my men may have made a mistake,"
said Birbal.
"Please wait while I find out."
He went inside and told one of his servants to go to Jwala Prasad's house and fetch his son.
"Tell him that his father wants him to bring the gold moher that he found at the bottom of the tin of ghee,"
said Birbal. In a short while the servant returned with the boy. Jwala Prasad was taken aback to see his son.
"Have you brought the gold moher?"
Birbal asked.
"Yes,"
said the boy, and pulled it out of his pocket.
"Weren't there 2 mohers in the tin of ghee?"
Birbal inquired with an air of innocence.
"No, Your Honor,"
replied the boy.
"We just found 1.
Jwala Prasad looked most uncomfortable.
"What nonsense are you saying?"
he snapped at his son.
"What would a gold moher be doing in a tin of ghee?" "But don't you remember?"
The boy looked at his father in surprise.
"We found the moher in the tin when we heated the ghee. You took the moher out and gave it to me for safekeeping." Yes, I remember. I gave you a moher,"
said Jwala Prasad hurriedly.
"But it didn't come out of any tin. One of my customers gave it to me." "Your son is telling the truth, Jwala Prasad,"
said Birbal.
"I put the gold moher in the tin myself to see what you would do with it."
Jwala Prasad was sweating with fear, but he still tried to bluff his way out.
"My memory must be playing tricks on me, Your Honor,"
he said.
"Please forgive me."
He turned to his son.
"Give the gold moher to his lordship at once. How can we keep what doesn't belong to us?" "And when do you propose to return the 1,500 rupees you borrowed from your friend Ramchand?"
inquired Birbal, taking the moher.
"Haven't you returned the money yet?"
The merchant's son asked his father anxiously.
"Be quiet,"
Jwala Prasad hissed at the boy, but he knew the game was up.
"Don't rebuke your son,"
said Birbal sternly.
"He is an honest lad, and he will make a better merchant than you. Now follow his example and tell me the truth."
Seeing there was no way out, Jwala Prasad confessed. As a penalty, Birbal told him to give Ramchand double the amount that he had borrowed from him. Jwala Prasad also returned the money he owed Birbal for half a mound of ghee.
"If such a dishonest man can have an honest son,"
thought Birbal, as father and son departed,
"then God be praised. There is still hope for humanity."
Chapter 8. A Gift from Saint Nicholas. Which is your favorite festival? How would you like to celebrate it? Suppose you are not able to celebrate your favorite festival because you have no money. How would you feel? Let's read the story of Saint Nicholas, who brought happiness to a poor and sad family. Klaas Schlaschenschlinger was a wealthy cobbler living on New Street in New Amsterdam. He married the fair Annette, who was as pretty as a picture. At first, Klaas and Anette were very happy and prosperous, raising geese and their children. But the arrival of a blacksmith who repaired shoes with hobnails so that the shoes lasted a year or more left Klaas, Anette and their children as poor as church mice. Christmas Eve found the family down to their last cold meal of bread and cheese. Klaas was wondering what he had left to sell in order to feed his family. Then he remembered a fine pipe that he had found in one of his stockings on a Christmas morning in Holland long ago. It was a fine pipe, too good for a mere cobbler. Klaas knew even then that such a gift could only be from St. Nicholas himself. Klaas leapt up and went to dig through an old chest until he found the pipe. As he unearthed it from under a pile of clothes, a draught of cold air came from the open front door. Klaas scolded his children for playing with the door and went to close it, but found the doorway filled by a merry round figure of a stranger.
Thank you, I will come in out of the cold,"
said the man, stomping in the door and taking a seat by the fire that blazed in the hearth. The family gathered around the white-bearded old man as he tried to warm himself. He scolded them roundly for not keeping the fire hot, and when Klaas admitted that they had nothing left to burn, the old man broke his fine rosewood cane in two and threw it on the fire. The cane blazed up merrily, heating the whole room and singeing the hair of the cat, which leapt away with a yowl of indignation, making everyone laugh. It was hard to be sober around this merry old man, who made sly jokes, told riddles, and sang songs. After sitting for half an hour with the family, the old man began rubbing his stomach and gazing wistfully at the cupboard.
"Might there be a bit to eat for an old man on this Christmas Eve?"
he asked Anette. She blushed in shame and admitted there was nothing left in their cupboard.
"Nothing?"
said he.
"Then what about the fine goose right there?"
Anette gasped, for suddenly the smell of a tenderly roasted goose filled the room. She ran to the cupboard, and there was a huge goose on a platter. She also found pies and cakes and bread and many other good things to eat and drink. The little boys and girls shouted in delight, and the whole family feasted merrily, with the little white-bearded man seated at the head of the table. As they ate, Klaas showed the old man the pipe he meant to sell.
"Why, that pipe is a lucky pipe,"
said the old man, examining it closely.
"You should keep this pipe all your days and hand it down to your children."
Finally, the church bells tolled at midnight, and the little old man cried,
"Midnight! I must be off."
Klaas and Anette begged him to stay and spend Christmas with them, but he just smiled merrily at them and strode over to the chimney.
"A Merry Christmas to you all, and a Happy New Year,"
he cried, and then he disappeared. Ever afterwards, Anette and her daughters claimed they saw him go straight up the chimney, while Klaas and the boys thought he kicked up the ashes and disappeared out of the door. The next morning, when Anette was sweeping the fireplace, she found a huge bag full of silver, bearing the words, "A gift from St. Nicholas." Outside the house, there arose a clamour of voices. When Klaas and Anette went to investigate, they discovered their wooden house was now made of brick. At first, the townfolk thought they were in league with a wizard. But when Klaas told them the story and showed them the new possessions and the riches left to them by the old man, they made him the town alderman. The transformed Dutch house remained a landmark for many years following the death of Klaas and Anette, until the British tore it down to make way for improvements in the neighbourhood. Chapter 9. Indian Weavers. Do you know who makes cloth? Have you ever seen a weaver? Would you like to know what kinds of cloth a weaver makes? Let's read this poem to find out more. Weavers weaving at break of day. Why do you weave a garment so gay? Blue as the wing of a halcyon wild, we weave the robes of a newborn child. Weavers weaving at fall of night, why do you weave a garment so bright? Like the plumes of a peacock, purple and green. We weave the marriage veils of a queen. Weavers weaving solemn and still, what do you weave in the moonlight chill? White as a feather and white as a cloud, we weave a dead man's funeral shroud. Chapter 10. Bray Rabbit falls down the well. Have you ever been asked to do some work that you do not like? Did you do that work or moved away secretly? Should we not do the work honestly which is assigned to us? In the story, a rabbit moves away secretly from the work and falls in a great difficulty. Let's read how. One day, Bray Rabbit, Bray Fox, Bray Coon, Bray Bear, and a lot of animals decided to work together to plant a garden full of corn for roasting. They started early in the morning and raked and dug and raked some more, breaking up the hard ground so it would be ready for planting. It was a hot day, and the rabbit got tired quickly, but he kept clearing away the debris because he didn't want anyone to call him lazy. Then the rabbit got an idea.
Oh,
He shouted as loudly as he could.
I have got a thorn in my hand.
He waved a paw and stuck it into his mouth. The other animals told him he'd better pull out the thorn and wash his hand before it got infected. That was just what the rabbit wanted to hear. He hurried off, looking for a shady spot to take a quick nap. A little way down the road, he found an old well with a couple of buckets hanging inside it, one at the top and one down at the bottom.
That looks like a nice cool place to take a nap.
The rabbit thought and hopped right into the bucket. Well, the rabbit was quite heavy, much heavier than the bucket full of water lying at the bottom. When he jumped into the empty bucket, it plummeted right down to the bottom of the well. The rabbit hung on to the sides for dear life. As the second bucket whipped past him, splashing water all over him on its way to the top. He had never been so scared in his life. His bucket landed with a smack in the water and bobbed up and down. The rabbit was afraid to move in case the bucket tipped over and landed him in the water. He lay at the bottom of the bucket and shook and shivered with fright, wondering what would happen next. Now the fox had been watching the rabbit all morning. He knew right away that the rabbit didn't have a thorn in its paw, and wondered what the rabbit was up to. When the rabbit slunk off, the fox followed him and saw him jump into the bucket and disappear down the well. The fox was puzzled. Why would the rabbit go into the well? Then he thought,
I bet he has some money hidden away down there and has gone to check up on it.
The fox crept up to the well, listening closely to see if he could hear anything. He didn't hear anything. He peered down into the well, but all was dark and quiet, on account of Rabbit holding so still, so that the bucket wouldn't tip him into the water. Finally, Fox had shouted down into the well,
Rabbit, what are you doing there?
The rabbit perked up at once, realizing that this might be his chance to get out of the well.
I am fishing down here.
He said,
I thought I'd surprise everyone with fresh fish for lunch. There is some real nice fish down here. How many fish are there?
Asked the fox skeptically, sure that the rabbit was really counting his gold.
Scores and scores,
cried the rabbit.
Why don't you come on down and help me carry them out?
Well, that was the invitation the fox was waiting for. He was willing to go down into the well and get some of the rabbit's gold.
How do I get down there?
Asked the fox. The rabbit grinned. The fox was much heavier than he was. If the fox jumped into the empty bucket at the top, then the rabbit's bucket would go up and the fox's bucket would go down. So he said,
Just jump into the bucket, Fox.
Well, the fox jumped into the empty bucket, and down it plummeted into the dark well. He passed the rabbit about halfway down. The rabbit was clinging to the sides of the bucket with all his might because it was moving so fast.
Goodbye, Fox.
He shouted as he rose, like the saying goes, some folks go up and some folks go down. You should make it to the bottom all safe and sound. The rabbit jumped out of the well and ran back to the garden patch to tell the other animals that the fox was down into the well, muddying up the waters. Then he danced back to the well and shouted down to the fox,
There's a hunter coming along to get a drink of water, Fox. When he hauls you up, you'd best run away as fast as you can.
Then the rabbit went back. When the thirsty hunter hauled up the bucket full of water, a wet and shaky fox sprang out and ran away before the hunter could grab his gun. An hour later, the fox and the rabbit were both back in the garden, digging and hauling away the debris and acting like nothing had happened, except every once in a while the fox would look sideways at the rabbit and grin, and they both would start to laugh and laugh because both of them had looked so silly plummeting up and down in that old dark well. Chapter 11. The Time Machine. Have you ever heard about the time machine? How would you feel if you got a machine which could take you into the past as well as into the future? Let us read an extract from the famous classic, The Time Machine.
My friends gathered around the machine in my workshop. It was exactly like the model I had shown them, only 20 times larger.
You mean you sit in that chair, pull that lever, and travel into the future?
Asked my friend, the writer.
Or into the past?
I said, whichever I choose.
And which would you choose?
Asked my friend, the psychologist. The future first, I said. It is the unknown that interests me the most.
But when do we get to see it in action? Can we take a ride in it ourselves?
They asked. Not yet, I said. I still have a few things to tinker with. Then it will be ready to go. Seeing my friend smile, I said, You may not believe me, but come to dinner here a week from now, and I promise to show you then that my time machine works. After my friends left, I called in my housekeeper and asked her to cook the best dinner she could make for my friends next week. I also handed her a note to give them when they arrived. The note read, I am sorry not to greet you, but I promise I would join you before the evening ends. Having given her these instructions, I set to work on the time machine. The work was very delicate, and I had to make sure that the size of the levers was just right to the smallest fraction of an inch. One lever was enough to start the machine traveling through time. Push the lever up and it went into the past. Put it down and it went into the future. The other lever was to stop it wherever I wanted, or rather whenever I wanted, because I would be staying in the same spot and only the time would change. I had finished my work before 4 in the morning. Now only one thing was left to do, to give the time machine its first test. I sat down in the seat of the time machine and looked at my watch. 19 minutes past 4. I held my breath and pulled the lever down a little bit. It felt as if I was falling through endless space, my stomach trying to squeeze into my throat, my mouth gasping for air. Quickly, I pulled the stop lever. I looked around me, and my heart sank. My coat still hung over the chair. My tools were where I had laid them. My workshop was just as I had left it. My machine was a failure. Then I saw daylight coming through the windows, and my heart started beating faster. The clock on the wall said 9:30. My watch read 21 minutes past 4. I had travelled more than 5 hours in just 2 minutes. The time machine worked. I suppose I should have stopped them and planned my next move, but I could not wait any longer to journey through time. I pulled the lever down again a little harder than before. Time outside the time machine speeded up. I saw my housekeepers whiz into the room and clean it in record time. It was clear that she could not see me. I pulled the lever further down and saw the window growing dark. Then it darkened again. Days went by like blinking lights. I pulled the lever down even more, and everything around me became a blur. The walls and the window of my workshop vanished. The machine was swaying now. I wanted to pull the lever all the way down. I did. Around me was a world of wonders, with huge buildings rising taller and taller, skies changing from dark grey to bright blue, and a countryside that turned greener and greener. I looked at the dials of the time machine, which told me how fast and far I was travelling. I was shocked. I had gone much faster and farther than I thought. I was in the year 8,02,701 AD. Those huge numbers made me lose my head and panic. I pulled hard on the stop lever and paid the price for it. The stop was too sharp and the machine tipped over. I was thrown from my seat stunned. I lay on soft green grass. I heard a very loud thunderclap, and a shower of hailstones stung my face. It was impossible to see. "A fine welcome," I muttered. "A man travels over 8 lakh years from a visit, and this is the greeting he gets." Then the hail thinned, and the sun shone through a break in the clouds, and I got my first good look at the world of the future.
Chapter 12. My watch. Do you wear a watch? Can you tell the time by your watch? Let's read this poem and know what the poet is saying about his watch.
I watch you, watch, my tick-tock watch. Just to pass the time, I hear you, watch, my click-clock watch. How you tick in time, I wonder, watch, my tick-tock watch. If it is a bore to just keep time, that click, tick time forever, evermore. I am thinking, watch, my click-clock watch. I guess you must feel glee when you rest, watch, a stopped clock watch for a dead battery.
Chapter 13. The Hockey Wizard. Do you like to play or watch hockey? Can you name any famous hockey player of India? Do you ever wish to meet any famous hockey player? Let's study about one of the greatest hockey players of India, Dhyan Chand. Major Dhyan Chand Singh was born in Uttar Pradesh on August 29, 1905. His father, Subedar Sameshwar Dutt Singh played hockey in the army. Dhyan Singh's family kept moving to different cities where his father was transferred on duty. His schooling suffered as a result, and he stopped going to school after he completed class 6. The family finally settled in Jhansi, where Dhyan's father got a small piece of land for a house. Young Dhyan did not show any special interest in sports, though he loved wrestling. In fact, his hockey career had quite an ordinary beginning. Dhyan and other youngsters used to cut a branch of a date palm tree and remove the leaves. With a curve at its end, this branch would become a makeshift hockey stick. They would make a ball from old rags. In 1922, at the age of 17, Dhyan Singh joined the Indian Army. He was a sepoy of the 14th Punjab Regiment. While serving in the regiment, he came in contact with Subedar Major Bhole Tiwari. Major Tiwari was very fond of hockey, and he was a good player himself. He recognized the talent in Dhyan Singh. He became Dhyan's guru and laid the foundation of his game. Tiwari and Dhyan Singh had no fixed time to play. Dhyan Singh also had to pay attention to the army duties and could not find enough time to practice during the day. So, he practiced alone on the field at night. While they rested, his army mates could hear him hitting the ball for hours at a time. The legend of Dhyan Chand and his unbelievable feats on the hockey field had begun. In 1962, Dhyan played his first match for India on the tour to New Zealand, beginning an international career that lasted 22 years. Dhyan Chand won gold medals at the Olympic Games in Amsterdam, 1928, Los Angeles, 1932, and as captain in Berlin in 1936. From a reporter's point of view on Dhyan Chand's performance in Berlin Olympics, with a flick of the wrist, a quick glance of his eyes, a sharp turn, and then another turn, and Dhyan Chand was through. Dhyan Chand could control the ball so well with his hockey stick that his opponents thought that there was some mischief at work. The Dutch broke his stick to check it if there was a magnet inside. The Japanese thought it was glue. Dhyan Chand's magical stick work drew crowds to the hockey field. His skilled stick work and amazing ball control left fellow players and spectators awestruck. He earned the nickname Hockey Wizard. When he played at the Berlin Olympics, a German newspaper carried a banner headline, "The Olympic Complex now has a magic show too." Dhyan Chand believed in the best. A great sportsman, he never lost his temper in the field, but he certainly had the will to win. Dhyan Chand played with excellent team spirit. He respected his teammates. Even though he was talented, he never boasted or showed off. He played selflessly, and if he found that one of his teammates was in a better position to score, he would immediately flick the ball to the well-placed player. Hockey is a game of 11 players, not of one individual, he always said. At the age of 51, Dhyan Chand retired from the army as a major. The government of India honoured him that year by awarding him the Padma Bhushan, India's third highest civilian honour. Dhyan Chand breathed his last on December 3, 1979 in Delhi. A year after his death, the Indian Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp in his honour. In addition, the Dhyan Chand National Stadium in New Delhi is named in his honour. August 29, his birthday, is celebrated as the National Sports Day in India. The President gives sports awards such as the Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna, Arjuna Award and Dronacharya Award on this day at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. In 2002, a Dhyan Chand Award for Lifetime Achievement in Sports and Games was set up to honour those sportspersons who have not only contributed to sports by their performance, but continue to do so for the promotion of sports even after their retirement from an active sporting career. Chapter 14. The Post Office. Have you ever been confined to your house due to illness? How did you feel? Who was there to tell you about the outside world? Let's read this play to know about a sick boy who was advised not to move out of his house. Characters: Madhav, watchman, physician; Sudha, Amal, Madhav's adopted child. A group of boys. Madhav's house.
The patient needs the most scrupulous care. I understand, but tell me what I should do. I have already mentioned, on no account must he be let out of the doors. Poor child! It is very hard to keep him indoors all day long. Ah, well, I must be going now.
The doctor leaves the room. Amal enters.
Uncle, may not I be out of to the courtyard at all? No, my dear, no. Look there where Auntie grinds lentils. The squirrel is sitting with his tail up, and with his wee hands he is picking up the broken grain of lentils and crunching them. Can't I run up there? No, my darling, no. Wish I were a squirrel. It would be lovely. Uncle, why won't you let me go out? Doctor says it's bad for you to be out. I'm off to work, but you won't go out, will you? No, I won't. But uncle, please let me be in this room by the roadside. Okay, you can stay there.
Madhav leaves the room. Amal is sitting by the window in his room. A watchman enters. He passes by Amal's window.
Ah, there's a watchman on his rounds. Watchman, I say, come and have a word with me. Aren't you afraid of the likes of me? No, why should I be? Suppose I march you out straight to the king. To the king? Do. Will you? But the doctor won't let me go out. No one can even take me out. I've got to stay here all day long. Doctor won't let you out, poor fellow. So I see your face is pale and there are dark rings round your eyes. Your veins stick out from your poor thin hands. Won't you sound the gong, watchman? I love to hear your gong. Tell me, why does your gong sound? My gong sounds to tell people that time waits for none, but goes on forever. Where, to which land? No one knows. Say, what's going on there in that big house on the other side that has a flag flying high up and people always going in and out? Oh, there. That's a new post office. Post office? Whose? Whose? Why, the king's, of course. Do letters come from the king to his office here? Of course. One fine day there may be a letter for you in there. A letter for me? But I am only a little boy. The king sends tiny notes to little boys. But who will fetch the king's letter to me when it comes? The king has many postmen. Don't you see them run about with round gilt badges on their chests? I'll be the king's postman when I grow up. Postman, indeed. Rain or shine, rich or poor, from house to house delivering letters. That's good work. There's the village headman. I must be off. If he catches me gossiping with you, there'll be a problem.
The watchman walks away quickly.
Who are you walking there? How your anklets tinkle. Do stop a while, dear, won't you?
A girl enters. I haven't a moment to spare. It is already late.
I see. You don't wish to stop. I don't care to stay on here either.
You make me think of some late stars of the morning. What's the matter with you?
I don't know. The doctor won't let me out.
Ah, me. Don't then. You should listen to the doctor. People will be cross with you if you're naughty. I know sitting by the window all the time must make you feel tired. Let me close the window a bit for you.
No, don't. This is the only one that's open. All the others are shut. But will you tell me who you are? I don't seem to know you.
I am Sudha, the daughter of the flower seller here.
What do you do?
I gather flowers in my basket.
Oh, flower gathering. That is why your feet seem so glad, and your anklets jingle merrily as you work. Wish I could be out too. Then I would pick some flowers for you from the very topmost branches.
I wish I could remain at home like you. Then I could play with my doll, Benny and Minnie, the pussycat. But I say, it's getting late, and I mustn't stop, or I won't find a single flower.
Oh, wait a little longer. I do like it so.
Be good and sit still, and on my way home, I'll come and talk to you.
You won't forget me, will you? I'm Amal, remember that.
I won't forget you, you'll see. Sudha runs away.
Say, brothers, where are you off to? Stop here a little. We're off to play. What will you play, brothers? We'll play being plowman. This is our plowshare. We two are a pair of oxen. Come out to play with us, won't you? The doctor won't let me out. Why not play on the road near this window? I could watch you then. What can we play with here? With all these toys of mine. Here you are. Have them. I can't play alone. They are lying about getting dirty and are of no use to me. How jolly. What fine toys. And you let us have them all. You don't really mind. No, not a bit. Have them by all means. But will you play with them in front of our door for a while every morning? I'm afraid I'm sleepy. I don't know. I feel like this at times. I have been sitting a long while and I'm tired. My back aches. We had better go then. We'll come again tomorrow morning.
Chapter 15. The Old Man. Do you help old people? We should not let old people feel unwanted. Why? How do you spend time with your old grandparents? Let's read this poem to know what this old man wishes.
Wrinkled skin and no kin, old and weary, dark and airy, a prison, a jail, a cage, a fusion of sadness and baldness. Why am I here? And what did I do to deserve this? I do not want to die. I just want to fly. Although it is true that my fate is decided, it is still good to think of what the jail guy stated. The last thing I want is world peace, and to touch the feathers of my pet geese.